Hi there. Welcome back to Black Women North of 50. I'm your host, Wynn Helms, psychotherapist, truth teller. I do love a good story, change seeker, and traveler of a journey north of 50. My guest today is Regina Jones. She's taking us back to the 1970s, time of afros, Afro Sheen and Afro Sheen cosmetics, hot pants, and activism. She's sharing about what it was like to be a young Black woman executive when the rules weren't written for us. Not only was she a first at something, she was the only in some ways in the work in the music industry. Back in a time when nobody knew how to spell diversity. She's the founder of Soul newspaper, which was started back in 1966. It was I think the first publication that featured Black musicians and entertainers. She brings us stories of grace, under pressure, perseverance, the lessons learned from closed doors and falling down and getting up again. Stay with me. Hi, thank you for coming back to Black Women North of 50. It's my privilege to have my guest, Regina Jones, here today to talk about what life was like in the 70s for Black women, executives, women working at all, actually. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
No, absolutely. Tell me, what was it that got you involved in music and the newspaper and all of those things?
I used to have a pet answer for this until a friend very recently made a comment that I was basically hijacked at 15, impregnated, had 5 children to raise, and run a business while my husband pursued his career. And that was said to me about 3 weeks ago, and it has not stopped. I never felt like a victim or thought of myself in that way at all. But that's the reality of what happens to too many women and happened to them all through the 70s, right on up to today, from the beginning of time.
Well, you're absolutely right. And you pushed through that and made a whole life for yourself in the corporate world. Where did that?
My mom was a tough chick. She was the eldest of 8 children, born in Arkansas, relocated the whole family, her father did, to Lincoln, Nebraska. And I heard a story from her brother one time about how if you were Black and you were walking down the sidewalk, when white folks came, you stepped off the sidewalk to the side. And he said, Ludelia never stepped off to the side, and everybody knew not to mess with her or any of her siblings. That's who my mother was. She was a person who, if she knew you were hungry, you'd never go hungry. If you needed a place to lay your head, you'd always have a place to lay your head. She was that way from the moment I was born and I knew her for the first time to the time she laid her head down.
And you're saying this was Nebraska?
Lincoln, Nebraska is where she was raised.
Okay. Where did her family come from?
Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay, very good. But that wasn't a place where you ever grew up or?
I never saw Arkansas until I was, I don't know, probably 60 years of age. I'm told that her mother was sitting on the front porch and a white guy was walking down the street and he saw this little, very fair, complexioned woman sitting on the porch in this Black neighborhood. And he opened the gate and went in to ask her what she was doing there. And my grandfather happened to be coming home at the same time, and he jumped in and punched the guy. So he had to leave Lincoln, Nebraska with his family very quickly if he wanted to live.
Wow, wow. It's amazing and real typical. Yeah, well, you just got all kinds of strength from both sides um, in your family. It's wonderful. I really part of this podcast has to do with embracing the shoulders that we're standing on to be where we are today, which is why I like asking about family, where you got your strength, who was your role model, that kind of thing. Music, was that something always that you loved?
No, I mean, I love music like any teenager loves music. I remember the first song I fell in love with was the Penguins' Earth Angel, will you be mine? Um, but I was busy raising 5 kids, and there wasn't a lot of time to, be in love with music during that time. I got married at 15, I had kids at 16, 17, 18, 19, and 22. I started running a soul newspaper at 23, and, there I was in the music business.
That's just it. It's amazing that you were able to do. And mothers had just have my respect because trying to raise children and have a job in a time when the rules weren't made for Black women, Black people, you know. So every door that you opened might get slammed in your face.
When I just celebrated my 83rd birthday, and I realized that the time still isn't, uh, what it should be for women or Black women in particular, and, I've witnessed so much change when things have happened and it looked like improvements, but then I've also watched it fall back over and over again, and I think right now it's back worse than I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. how, how did you handle being underestimated?
I think I took advantage of it.
How so? How so?
Um, I didn't have role models at that time. I remember going to New York and meeting Ruth Bowen, and Ruth Bowen was the manager of Aretha Franklin, and she was a Black woman, and she had this fabulous office up in this fabulous building in Manhattan in New York, and I'd never met or seen anything like that or met anyone like her. I was honored that she even saw me. Soul started in 1966, 1 year after the Watts riots. And the only organization I remember at that time or prior to was NATRA, National Association of TV and Radio Announcers, or something like that. And I don't remember any men being members of that organization. And they had a conference once a year. And I remember going to the Grove one time with my husband, and Sam Cooke was performing. And Dionne Warwick had just been discovered and had just recorded her first record. Larry McCormick was a DJ on KGFJ, and Dionne came out and danced on a table where we all were because she had been a dancer before she was a recording artist.
Did not know that.
And I remember my husband telling me, whatever I do, don't go into the hotel and wander in any hallways, because those were the days when you could be snatched into a room and violated. And that was normal and not abnormal. And I heard him, I listened. I had a thing down when I would meet someone, I would say, "Hello, I'm Ken Jones's wife. We have 5 kids, and I'm the publisher of Soul." That's how I introduced myself. So I was basically saying, "I'm not available. I have 5 children. I have a husband who you might have heard of. And by the way, this is who I am and what I'm doing."
It's so interesting that the corporate business part of your title was last.
That's right. I was last,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
but I also used it when I was confronted with having to make a decision. I would look you right in the eyes and say, "Well, when let me check with my husband and get back with you." I didn't need to check with anybody, but that was how I would stall you. I would utilize what we would call shackles to give me freedom.
Did you say shackles?
That's what I said.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. This was during a time when civil rights movement, women's movement, all happening at the same time.
The late 60s.
Mhm. What part of and you didn't have time. You had 5 kids. Girl, you didn't have time for nothing. Um,
I was blessed to be an only child, so my mother really stepped up and helped with the children. Otherwise, there's no way on earth I could have run Soul and learned as much as I did, little at a time. I went in as a keeper. I was working at LAPD at the Los Angeles Police Department as a radio telephone operator. That's the person who talks to the police officers in their cars. And I got the first officer needs help call for the Watts riots. And uh, until recently, it still gave me a stomach ache even to think about hearing an officer needs help call come and not knowing who he was or where he was. But somehow or another, my husband had the vision when he went out. I called him at home when I got on a break and said, he was a reporter. And I said, you need to get out in the streets and see what's happening right in our neighborhood. Something's happening and it's about to explode. And he did. And watching it, Los Angeles burn or Watts burn from where he was in an office up at Sunset near Vine, he came up with the idea that there was nothing for Black people to make them happy and for us to communicate. And he thought about music, which he adored and loved. And he came up with the idea to come out with a newspaper that told the stories of Black recording artists, singers, musicians, and all of that. And that was his vision for soul. And then he came home and talked to me about it. And I said, it's a great idea. And we went over names. And I said, soul's the name. I didn't like Flash or whatever the other names he had. And we started publishing. All I had to do at that time was the bookkeeping. But I went in the office one time to pick up checks and bills and all that kind of stuff. And receptionist was asleep on the sofa in the reception area. So without a thought, I fired her without thinking, now who's going to have to be the receptionist at the office? So I had to leave my job. I took a leave of absence at the police department and then filled in and then never went back.
Well, you were hardcore even then.
Yes.
Do your job or you're out.
Well, I was an only child. My parents were in their early 30s when they had me. And they were both children who, not understanding then, but I believe some understanding now, had lived through so much stress. My dad had just come back from the World War II, shaking like a leaf. And I was 3 years old when I met him, and I'd heard all these things about this wonderful man who was going to come home, my daddy, and instead this man who shook and smoked and was traumatized by what he'd seen in the war and in Italy. And then my mother, 30 something, occurred to her she could have a child if she hadn't had one to date. She was a hairdresser, pulled hair, played the horses, she played poker, they drank, they gambled. I had to be a child very early. So, I started parenting them about 10. Would go to the beauty shop on a weekend, a Saturday, and get her money and take it and go to the post office and buy a money order and pay the utility bill so that it wouldn't come with a red notice or something, and then see them have to get into an argument about who should have paid the bill. So that's just how I was wired. I can't take credit for it. It's just how I was created.
And all of those things I would not wish on a child so young. And they helped you in your later life as a businesswoman.
Helps me to today
I love it.
that I've just now really learned to care for Regina and not everybody else, and learning how to allow everybody to be whoever in the hell they are, and I call it let them, and just love them unconditionally without uh, giving them a power or taking on the responsibility of changing them. Because what I've learned now is that even when I want to change something about myself, it's hard and almost impossible often to do. So how in the heck can I change anybody else if I can't change me when I want to?
But that's one of the things about being north of 50 after having, well, not after, you're still a mother. Um, you're constantly thinking about somebody else, constantly,
Every day.
and not just at home. I mean, I think it's hardwired into Black women. Just other is first, and you're saying what I think is true. At some point, it's like, okay, no, I'm taking myself back. I'm not.
Been practicing that all of this year, and it's the most rewarding experience I've ever had. I've never felt so free before in my life. And it doesn't mean cutting people off or anything like that. It means not thinking I have to fix anyone because no one's broken. They're just demonstrating what their lives are about. That includes my children, my grandchildren, my relatives, my friends, everybody. And it's hard to stick to it. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, I mean, most of your life you were doing for other.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me one of your proud moments from being an executive back in the 70s.
Hmm. When we put the Jackson 5 on the cover of Soul, and the mailman showed up not with us being a part of the mail in his mail bag, but with bags of mail. And just thinking, okay, what we're doing is working. This was a great decision to do 6 issues on them, one on the whole Jackson 5, and then one on each of the Jackson. Every issue sold out. And that was, I think, in 1972. I wouldn't swear to it, but just to see that mailman dragging these bags of mail in and then to call over to Motown and talk to Skip Miller and Miller London and tell them I had mail for them because we couldn't possibly, my staff, we couldn't go through all that mail. And they came over and they were just mind boggled. It was a fabulous, wonderful, successful, right on feeling.
Yeah. It had to have been the, "Oh my goodness, we've made it,"
Yeah.
kind of moment.
When we went and saw them perform at the Daisy Club, Ken and I, in Beverly Hills, and yeah, and Diana Ross introduced them, and when the show was over, Ken said, "They're gonna be a tremendous hit," and he made the suggestion of, "Let's do that," and I just remember being at the park up at La Cienega and Olympic, interviewing them, and Roland Charles, the photographer, was taking pictures, and Judy Spiegelman was interviewing them. I took my kids up to make them feel more at home because my oldest was a year or two younger than Michael, and just hanging out with them, shooting baskets, talking stuff, you know. Uh,
Just regular folk.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
That's so wonderful. I think I know where that park is that you're talking about. Oh, tell me a little bit about the film.
Okay, that was me making it. I'm the as my daughter Karen told me, Mom, stay out of it. You're the talent. They're the filmmakers, and what I've been practicing along with take self care is just learning how to say, if someone invites me to do something or does something for me or thinks I need to do something, I say, "Thank you. Yes, I will be very happy to." And I just suit up and I show up. The filmmakers came to me to do a film on the Watts riot because they had seen an article I wrote 25 years after in the LA Times about the Watts riots. And once they came and we talked, Billy and I talked for one of the directors at the beginning. He was the director. We talked on the phone for close to a year, and he'd made a decision that it was not a Watts riot story he wanted to do. He wanted to do my life story, and and I said okay because I'd gotten comfortable with him, and they brought on board. He's Billy Miosi, and they brought on a woman named Soraya Saline, who was teaching at CalArts. She was a camera woman, and then she and I got to know each other because she lived here in LA, where Billy lived in Ohio, and we're still very close. But anyhow, they made the film, and they really were kind to me on so many levels in the filmmaking because there were things they could have done would have been more sensationally sensationalizing, but they really protected me and looked out after me and let it be my authentic self to the point I'm very pleased. Um,
I'm so pleased that I was able to see it. Tell me the name.
who in the hell is Regina Jones?
I love that.
That's me, because they have a nice name, and I said, "Who in the hell is Regina Jones? Who is? Who cares? Why?" everybody watch. Um, I just have had a blessed life. I mean, I still have friends that go back. Oh God, Brenda Andrews, who was one of the first Black women, if not the first one in music publishing at A&M Records. Patricia Shields, Pat Shields, I just had dinner with her last night, and I remember in the early '80s, her husband. I knew him up at Solar Records, Raymond Shields, and he had a woman he was dating and in love with in New York, and she was coming here, and he wanted her to meet me and for us to be friends. And we're friends to this day. There's people like Sheila Eldridge, publicist Young, is out here. We're still friends. It just goes on. But this is in the '80s when after Soul had folded, had gone bankrupt, my marriage had died, my mother had died, all of this like in 80, 81, 82. I hit rock bottom and was trying to figure out how I was going to get myself back to work to keep the roof over my head. And I think I had one kid at home. And Dick Griffey at Solar Records invited me out to dinner. And I thought he was trying to reach someone else through me. And I said, okay, so Dick, why are we here? And he said, I want to hire you as my vice president of publicity. And I said, I don't know how to do publicity. And Dick said, I'm willing to pay you for 6 months to prove that you do. And I said, when do I start?
Nice to have someone have that much faith in you.
That was the end of 1983. And I remember Ornetta Barber and I guess it was Jalila Larso came up to my office and let me know that whatever I needed to learn and be on the other side of the business, they were there to help me. And I had that reaction from all the Black women who now were in positions of authority that didn't have that kind of authority in the '70s. They started moving into it in the '70s. But I mean, how can you do wrong when people are there offering to help you?
I keep wondering about what day to day life was like for you at work in the 70s, a Black woman in an probably all male, all white world.
You know, in the '70s, I was running Soul. So I had to run a staff. I had to sell advertising. I had to deal with distribution and distributors. I had to do everything of it. Very little music was there. If I was there, if I was working or I had to be there. Like there's a picture of Bruce Tolman took of me while we were Leonard Pitts was interviewing Stevie Wonder, and we were at what is it, Waffles, up on Gower, Chicken and Waffles,
Roscoe's.
Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, and you can he caught a picture of me while Leonard is interviewing Stevie. I'm sitting somewhere else, kind of looking down. I'm there because it was appropriate to be there because Stevie had said okay for us to do this. So I'm there to support to what's going on, but I'm thinking about 100 other things I could be doing somewhere else. And it was hard. It was very hard. Um, my staff was both female and male. It was always challenging to find good, strong uh, Black writers. I developed so many writers and photographers. Bruce Tolman, who I keep mentioning because we're friends, he started in '72 shooting for Soul. And we're still besties to this day. And he's always saying how I gave him his start. Well, I always say to him, if you hadn't had the talent,
Wouldn't have happened.
it wouldn't have happened.
You were in your early 20s when you first started being a professional executive. Black woman executive in your 20s.
23, 24.
I mean, it's hard to gain respect anyway. But a baby, a young Black woman, how was that for you?
No, I was blessed. There was a woman named Joyce Miller who was a promotions woman, had moved here from Detroit. worked for Capitol Records. She was one of the rare few, if others existed in the '60s. And she was good friends with some of the record executives. She was good friends with a whole lot of people and introduced me. And, oh God, I'm just thinking, uh, we were a smaller family. You know, what you see now is so magnified of a very small, intimate business that it was in the '60s. And then in the '70s, as it started to grow, remember at first they didn't even put Black artists on their not album covers, but on their sleeves or their album covers or anything because they were selling the music. I don't know what they thought people thought it was. But anyway, you'd see a blonde on the album cover of a Black artist. And I wish I should look up and see what some of those names were.
My
Um,
goodness, now that I think back, that's exactly right. I never even put that together.
yeah, that's why so much we don't recognize and realize. I remember once up at Capitol Records going to a party, and this guy that I did business with, he said, "Don't move. I want my wife to meet you." And he goes and he comes back with his wife, and he says, "Honey, this is Regina Jones. She's the most independent colored girl that I have ever met." And he was praising me, and I kept my smile intact, but it was so damn offensive. And he had no clue. Um, he was clueless, you know. LeBaron Taylor, I remember he was vice president at one of the CBS Columbia Records labels, and I remember being upset with him and letting him know how upset I was. But instead of being mean and ugly, he heard what I said. He became one of my best friends and took care of me and looked out after me for years. Jimmy Terrell did the same thing. Cecil Holmes. There was a bunch of them. The Black guys, when they met me, knew what I was doing. The executives helped. They did what they could to help me, and they were protective of me, and, it was nice. It was
It takes me back to being um, early teen in the early '70s. I think Michael Jackson is 2 years. He was be 2 years older than me. I had invited him to my house at one point. Another story. Anyway, I think about my mom being in the same age group and talking with her about why are you doing this? And not in terms of the civil rights. I knew about civil rights, but women's rights. Um, and I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, You've got to figure that out on your own."
Did you invite Michael Jackson to your
I sent him a letter. He never responded. I don't know why.
house? I'm in touch with a lady that she's probably in your age group, but, she was a real fan of the Jacksons, Janice DeSylvia. Um, but she came here on her vacation from school and hung out at the gate at Havenhurst until they let them in and allowed them to meet Michael, and she was in touch with Michael while he was alive, and he really flattered them and was kind to them, and to this day, she still talks about it, remembers it as a fan like she was back when she was 16.
Oh, that's wonderful. Goodness. Tell me about a time you actually brought one up just now when you were offended and there was nothing you could do but take it. Was there ever a time when you just like that's it? I'm not. I'm going to address the fact that this is upsetting and rude to someone. You kind of couldn't, huh?
I'll tell this Clarence Avant story. I don't know what the year was, but, Clarence Avant, The Black Godfather is the documentary of his life. Amazing what he accomplished. I met he and his wife, Jackie, when they first moved to Los Angeles. Somehow another Ken and Clarence had crossed paths, and they invited us up to their home, their new home, for dinner. But time had moved along, and Clarence had a record company. Bill Withers, I'm pretty sure, was the artist at that time, and he hadn't paid the bill. He had bought an ad and sold, and they hadn't paid the bill. So I started calling the office because I desperately needed the money once a week. And then I got real desperate and I start calling every day. And about the third or fourth day of the week, I'm calling daily. He comes to the phone and he proceeds to curse me up one side of the phone and down the other. Calls me everything but a child of God. And then when he finally stops ranting, he says, "Are you there?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Now may I come pick up my check?" And he said, "You crazy bee, come get it." I went and got in my car, drove over, picked up my check. I had already come to realize not to take anything personal, never let them know they got you or hurt you or made you feel bad. Keep your lips stiff, keep the smile on your face, and accomplish what you set out to do. And from then on, I got nothing but respect and love from Clarence. And later in life, he and his wife and I became dear, dear friends, Jackie. She had reached out to be friends at one point earlier, and I said simply to her, "Jackie, I think you're fabulous, but I can't do business with your husband and be friends with you." I don't know how I knew that, but I knew that, okay? Um, Another time, United Artists trying to get sell them an ad, going up there, and I've got nowhere. And I had a woman working for me who happened to be a former model, blonde and blue eye. I said, Lois Johnston, I said, "Lois, you go next time. Say I couldn't make it and you go." She came back with the ad. Right. Work what you have. I learned that so early. And it's just to this day, I don't take things personal. I realize that people have their issues. They're not my issues. I'm not the center of their universe. I'm not the reason for most things. And not gonna and I can disagree with you, but still do business with you and be polite and friendly a little bit.
I remember being with my mother somewhere, and this woman, white woman who, um, she had to be in her 70s or 80s, and at that time, mom was in her 30s, 40s, that area. And the woman came up to her and said, "I'm so proud of your people. You've done so much and come so far." And she's just, being gracious. "Thank you, thank you." Afterwards, I was like, "Mom, what the heck?" She said, "Well, that comes from that age group."
That's right.
You know,
See, your mama knew.
she did. Mhm. And it was mortifying to me, but when she said it, I was like, "Okay, I get it. I
Yeah.
understand now."
Yeah, in those days, like, because there wasn't any real competition, when Soul came out, there was Ebony, there was Jet Magazine, and there was Sepia Magazine. I don't think there was anything else, and there were local newspapers, black newspapers. So we pretty much had carte blanche through the end of the '60s, all the way up through probably '75, '76, with all black entertainers. And then there had become a bunch of other publications, and white publications were covering black artists. Then it became harder and harder to get to them. Um, I even remember one time, uh, Aretha Franklin had obviously become angry with something we'd written in Soul, and she became unavailable, and I wasn't used to that. And I don't know what possessed me, but I called Reverend C.L. Franklin, her father, and told him what was going on. He said, "Mm-mm, that'll never happen." And it never happened again. I always had a relationship with Aretha right up to shortly before she made her transition. She actually reached out to me on Facebook to be friends. And I said, "You're not Aretha. Who is this? And what do you know?" And she was, "Yes, it is." Yeah. I said, "Share with me something only you and I know." She shared something. I said, "No, everybody knows that." And then she said, "Call my manager." And I called her manager and he said, "Yes." And you could tell he was totally disgusted. That's Aretha on Facebook. And, so then I'm watching all her down home real postings on Facebook. And one time I wrote her something I wish we had had time to more time to spend together and had become friends. And she wrote back, I thought we were, otherwise I wouldn't even be talking to you.
I want to go back and make sure I got this right. Reverend Franklin told on Aretha.
No,
That's not it?
I told Aretha to Reverend Franklin he wasn't doing soul interviews. And he said that won't happen again. She will
Oh,
always
okay.
be available.
Yeah. Wow. You got to meet some of the, oh my goodness.
But who in the heck was I? Who in the hell was Regina Jones that thought she could call Aretha's daddy and tell on Aretha?
Now that takes some, I don't know what to call it, stones. Good for you. At that point, do you remember how far you are along in the business at that point when you had that conversation with her?
Early 70s, probably. I don't know. I'd have to,
So you in your 30s ish?
yeah, probably, maybe 30. Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you weren't taking no for an answer.
No, because like I said, we were a small group at the beginning, and it grew, and people had attitude. I remember one time, Natalie Cole had done an interview, and we wrote the story, and then her people call saying, "Natalie's upset she didn't say that," and I said, "Do you want me to send you the tape?" Because we tried to tape interviews, and my writers didn't always do it, damn it, because I would have a vault of incredible material. I do have some, but not what it should have been. And all we did was, replayed the tape, and she had said everything. I mean, we were a journal, a newspaper. I considered us journalists, and we wanted to print the truth, not pap, not publicity outlet. And I can remember even writing a letter to Bob Jones, who was head of publicity for Motown, saying, "Dear Bob, I came across this in the last year in cleaning stuff. Dear Bob, could in the future, when we do interviews with Motown artists, would we find a neutral place because they're in a different mood when they're up in the Motown offices?"
Mm.
That was a lot of nerve, okay? And I also remember one night being at the office all alone. It was late, and the phone rang, and I answered it, and it was David Ruffin crying. He had just been fired by the Temptations, and he
Mhm.
wanted to tell soul on them, and I'm not the writer. I'm writing as fast as I can, taking notes and trying to then reach Motown. We're going to press the next day, so I'm trying to flip a new story from the cover story we had, and we bust we busted the news out. We put it out, and Motown was pissed at me for several months and wouldn't talk to me, including Bob, my friend. Oh,
They got over it though, huh?
yeah, they got over, but we, like I said, we were reporting the news, which we don't hardly have much of these days. I don't mean to laugh at things, but I have to laugh to keep from crying. Um, and where we are, 2025. If if I took it personal or thought I could change anything, I would wreck myself and I would not be free and happy at this stage of my life.
No, I was gonna ask you, I know that it was, as you were saying, the first Black R&B publication for music artists. Were there other types of articles in there, or was it just about the
We
music industry?
No, it started out mostly music and then it expanded to be Black entertainment. And then we would slide a little news in there too from time to time. Um, yeah, because it got rough at the end. Like I said, at the beginning, there were no budgets set aside for Black advertising. Whatever they set, it was set for Johnson Publications, which was Jet and Ebony. Sepia got a little trinkling, and here we are asking for it, and it just wasn't budgeted. I remember one publicity guy from one of the record companies had come into my office. He was from New York, and he had attitude. And I remember him, trying to make it hard and the whole bit. And I said, "Buddy, if there wasn't a soul, you wouldn't have a damn job as a Black top publicist. What would they need you for?" And that was how I rolled.
Yeah, and it's just so uplifting to hear, um, because it just I think about, like I said, how I am able to sit here and talk to you on a podcast when, 60 years ago, that just wasn't happening,
No,
No. And
no. One time I was upset because we couldn't get any advertising out of the film industry when black exploitation made its big debut, and black movies were everywhere, and we were fighting to get ads. And a friend of mine, Jim Hunter, was in town, and we were talking about this, and we just sat there in my office and said, "Let's just go up to Universal Studios and ask to see Lou Wasserman." And the two of us with our froze went up to Universal Studios and asked to see Lou Wasserman. We were asked if we had an appointment, and I said no, but we're willing to wait here all day till he can squeeze us in. And then we watched them beef up their security. And then they sent Walter Burrell, who was a columnist for Soul, who was also a publicist for Universal, out to see us. I said, "Walter, this is above your pay grade. I don't want to get you in trouble. We can't talk to you." And then they sent out a guy named, I think his name was Sam Keith. And we went in and met with Sam, and we walked out of there with a 6-month contract.
if you don't ask, the answer is definitely going to be no, right?
And no, no, to this day, to me, and always has and always will, means not right now.
It's great. I remember you
Right?
saying that in the film. I love that.
It's not right now. I can't hear no, even though I'm learning how to practice saying no.
Yeah, exactly. Now's the time. It's like, sorry, can't. I mean, how long have I been chasing you? Like months. I was not taking no for an answer.
Right. And you notice I get gratitude about it. It's like, okay, I gotta figure out how to do this. Being a behind the scenes person at Soul, and then as a publicist in my career, and then later as a fundraiser, development manager, publicist, and nonprofit. Being out front with this film, this documentary, only 3 times have I been at a screening here in Los Angeles where I was there with the audience and then had Q&A after. I'm literally sick after for days.
Mm,
So, I've had to really learn how to take care of myself, space myself, um, nurture myself.
what is it that makes you sick after all of that, do you think?
Like I said, I like to push your buttons and tell you what to do, and to get your gum out of your mouth, and to hold your head up, and
But not vice versa.
like I said, Ken Jones is my husband. Okay, I'm Ken Jones's wife. I'm Jesse Jackson. I'm doing publicity for Jesse Jackson when he ran for president in the '80s. I put together for Dick Griffey is putting together a luncheon for Bishop Desmond Tutu on, if not his first, one of his first visits to Los Angeles. Always behind the scenes. When I worked in publicity with Dick, I remember one time his daughter, Regina Griffey, came up to me and she's like, "Urgent, deadline, blah, blah." And I said, "Regina, why at the last minute do you come to me with this stuff?" And she said, "Daddy tells us all, do it yourself. And if you can't, take it to Regina and she'll get it done." I was pissed. I was pissed, but honored at the same time.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
And that. One of my first, podcast episodes was with our mutual friend, Mita King, and you wrote a wonderful comment on that episode, which is it's just so interesting that you write it now. Back when you were in your 20s, it was your husband first, you do this, and then Regina Jones. And that's kind of what you put in your comment. I want Wynn Helms to be louder about who she is
Yep.
and not take a back seat.
Yeah. And I had to limit myself because I immediately, the publicist to tell you what to do, critiqued it and was going to go in and tell you how to do things. And I can already see the difference with you engaging me now than what I saw you with you and Mita. Uh, and it's delightful. Okay. This isn't the woman that interviewed Mita.
No, I'm learning. I'm stepping on out there. Yeah, this is
But if we can give someone else a boost, I paid my dues, you gotta pay yours too. Bullshit. I paid my dues to save you as many dues as possible. I'm willing to share. I'm willing to.
Yes.
My Yeah, about doing the documentary is if one person saw that documentary or sees it and it makes a positive change in their life, I've accomplished something very important.
Well, it
That
certainly did me. I hope that it gets picked up somewhere so that other people can see it. Um, yes, in the film, you went on Soul Train at one point and spoke.
I saw every time I see that piece, I'm horrified. I could feel and see myself and how really nervous I was. And
You hit it well.
yeah, I was good, poker face. In my last career working in nonprofit, I did um, a big event fundraiser dinner or something, and afterwards in the management, I'm an employee. I'm used to being self-employed. So I'm an employee, I'm part of the staff, I'm in a manager's meeting, and they're critiquing the event. And they're saying how good the event was, except you hurt people's feelings, meaning other staffers, and we can't have that. So next year around or next event around, they're saying, this one was great. Nobody got hurt. And I sat there as long as I could, this about 20 years ago, biting my tongue. And then I said, no, there were bodies. I just learned how to hide them. You cannot meet a deadline without a few casualties.
Yeah.
And I'm trained from 16 years of having to get on that press slot that was ours every 2 weeks. I don't know how to miss a deadline. At least I didn't. I do now. I didn't then.
Well, you know what? It's making me think about doing this podcast, and I'm tripping. Oh my gosh, I'm going to miss a deadline. I'm trying to do twice a month, and sometimes it's hard to find people to interview. So I'm having to like I'm gonna miss it this week. I am, but we got Regina Jones next week, so I'm good. Just have to. It's you know what? This isn't brain surgery. You know, I'm doing this for fun because I believe in community and community for Black women. And if I can offer something to bring us more together, then that's what I want to do.
One of the things that makes me the happiest in the world is to see the numbers of us that are out doing and accomplishing things. That feeds my soul over and over again. Like I just Bruce. Last night I went to a screening at something I'd never heard of before, Red Cat, which is a part of the Cal Arts, and it's funded by the Disney people, and it's to show young talent in theater and film and all that stuff. And we're honoring my friend S. Pearl Sharp, who was when I first met her, Sandra Sharp, an actress in The Learning Tree. And this room was filled with people that were there to honor and see her work from prior to 2000 to the early 2000s. And just to see all these Black people there that many I hadn't seen in 10, 20 years, but we would recognize each other and say, hey, still standing. Uh, and to see that auditorium filled with us, it just felt so special and so good. I'm still high on it.
I went to a podcast summit this past summer in Atlanta,
Uh-huh.
and it was just wonderful to see so many Black people together with the common purpose
Yes.
for doing podcasting. It really filled my heart. I really enjoyed doing that. Okay, well, in winding up here, anything that you want to say to Black women entrepreneurs in 2025 from your experience moving?
Never give up on yourself. If you trip and fall, if you get knocked down, however you go down, don't worry about it. Just start pulling yourself right back up and try it again. Failure is a way to make yourself stronger and better. It's not to end your desire or to stop you. Just believe in yourself, believe in what you're told to do, and do it. And never give up on yourself. If other people do, give them the middle finger.
Very good. Thank you so much, Regina. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
This has been fun, and I just wish you nothing but success with this.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
I know it's the long game, you know, but I'm gonna stay in there, get knocked down, and come right back up, like you said. Thank you so
Good.
much.
Thank you.
Well, that was a conversation that really got me thinking about my mom and growing up in the 70s with a woman like my mom, who was a professional Black woman, and all the things that she had to go through to make things better for Black women in the 21st century. It's a powerful reminder, even though uh, we've had progress since then, but it was earned one brave step at a time. If this episode spoke to you, pass it along. I'd love to have you subscribe. Sister gotta eat, just saying. Until next time, create your joy, stay curious about life, and find funny every day. We need it bad.